Hello, everyone. Let us know where you're from. We're going to get started in just a minute. We're going to give people a couple of seconds to get in from the waiting room, and then we'll get started. But please let us know where you're from in the chat. Awesome. We're excited to see so many people from all over. Thank you for joining us. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for ILEA's keynote event. My name is Gwendolyn McNutt, CSEP, and I am the chair of the ILEA Professional Development Committee. Thank you so much for being here. Today, we will be presenting The Show Must and Can Go On, Safely Producing Live Events During the Pandemic, powered by Giants Enterprises. ILEA is proud to team up with longtime partner Giants Enterprises to create relevant, timely, and high-quality webinar content for our community as we support our industry through recovery. Giants Enterprises is dedicated to the curation and development of new ventures complementary to the San Francisco Giants franchise by delivering larger-than-life experiences to millions at Oracle Park and beyond. Giants Enterprises creates memorable events abundant with excitement and engagement, both virtually and in person, for their varied partners as well as local and international visitors. Positioned at the intersection of sports, entertainment, meetings, events, tourism, and hospitality, Giants Enterprises provides the rare combination of people, experiences, and platforms necessary to create giant impressions. Thank you again, Giants Enterprises. I also have a few housekeeping notes before we begin. We will be recording today's session, and it will be posted on the ILEA Hub. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the Q&A, and we'll get to some of them at the end of the discussion. Also, please share your thoughts and join in the always lively and interesting conversations happening in the chat. And finally, we'd love for you to share your thoughts and experiences on social media using the hashtags ILEA Webinar Wednesday and ILEA Welcomes All. Finally, our speakers have also generously agreed to share their slides with us following the presentation, so no need to worry about feverishly jotting everything down. I'm so honored that I will be sharing in this conversation today with ILEA's International President, Dana Macaulay, CSEP. Dana is hello. Dana is the Managing Director of Sonoma County Auction at Sonoma County Vintners. With over 15 years of experience in experiential marketing and event production, Dana's passion is for developing strategic initiatives which have included designing new winery event programs and launching the inaugural Sonoma County Barrel Auction in 2015. Dana also runs the Sonoma County Wine Auction, which has been named one of the top charitable U.S. wine auctions by Wine Spectator, raising over $37 million to date to support nonprofit organizations across the region. Thank you for joining us today, Dana. We're also excited for our two speakers to share their vast experience and knowledge with you. So let's get to it. We're so fortunate to have Emmanuel André, one of our guests today. As a trained engineer, Emmanuel has been an industrial management consultant for over 15 years and is also a safety engineer with a Swiss federal diploma. After 3 years of consulting in the field of health and safety, he joined MCI in 2007 as Health and Safety Director. As such, he is particularly active in the fields of event security and crisis management. Also joining us today is Marine Mugnier as Health and Safety Coordinator at MCI since 2018. Marine supports the definition and implementation of MCI's global health and safety strategy and methodologies. She coordinates the training, reporting, and communication projects at the group level. Please welcome today's speakers, Emmanuel, André, and Marine Mugnier. Take it away.
Okay. Do you see my screen? It's okay? Okay. So, good afternoon good morning from France. From my flat, because for the second time in France, we are confined. This time it's a large lockdown with the possibility to get out only 1 hour a day. So it's very difficult. So it's a chance today for us to travel to US by Zoom. Thank you to welcome in your country a French guy with a terrible accent. To start this session, I would like to say some words about the crisis, this terrible crisis for our business. 3 facts. First, this crisis is a global crisis. A global crisis because it's a worldwide crisis. But in the past, we had other worldwide crises, like terrorism. But for this time, the COVID-19 touches every family. We can say that each person in the world is affected by the crisis. Secondly, the COVID not affect the countries in the same time, and different responses have been developed by the government to manage the crisis. Then, it's very difficult to predict the end of the crisis, and we don't know exactly how will be the world after the crisis. So we have a lot of doubts. Secondly, if we list and consider the different actors of an event, we have first the government who decide, set limits, and impose legislative frameworks. Then we find our partners, venue, event organizer, and to try to protect the business, all of them have prepared some plan and measures. Of course, we have the client, and the client may impose additional measures. And of course, we have the attendees, and we can say that in this context, the attendees are afraid by the situation. So for me, this organization is too complicated. The last point is, this point is very important for me. With this crisis, at the beginning, it's not possible to do event. But in the future, when we return to the normal situation, we can see that we can do events with no restrictions. But from this to this, we have different steps. We can perhaps in the future open some small events, more important events, some congress, etc., to return to the normal situation. At the same time, we found the restrictive measures. So it's the same. At the beginning, we have a lot of measures, and with the time, we think that we lost some measure to return to the normal situation. The problem, I think, is for the event industry, all define some reopen plan with this restrictive measure, with all restrictive measures. But we don't need that. We need some plan to each steps. And that is very important. So the difficulty is to define this plan during the time because it's not possible to predict the futures. So events needs to be adapted to the context, and it's very important. If we return to the actors of an event, I think that the solution is that the event organizer must understand the legal disposition. They must work with the different partners, venues, etc., to find the best consensus. And then they must explain, communicate, and reassure the attendees. And for me, the event organizer must be the conductor of the process, the conductor of the system. And for that, it must be agile. So when I work on my first reopen plan, I did exactly the same. I create plans with a maximum of restrictive measure. But one more time, it was not realistic. So I decided to create a new plan with this consideration. So Marine is going to present you this plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. And hello, everyone. So with all of this consideration in mind, we know that it's a situation that is constantly evolving, that the situation is different in every part of the world. So the methodology that we have defined in the end at MCI is a methodology that needs to be adaptive and that should reflect the context. So the methodology that we've shared with our teams is a generic framework, but that aims to, in general, guide our teams when they plan their events. But as I said, it's meant to be adaptive and it's meant to be used at any time during the crisis. So no matter what the evolution. So this is what Emmanuel calls being agile, is that we should be able to use this methodology whenever in the time. So it helps ensure that we have taken all aspects of the event into account, that nothing has been forgotten. But when we plan our events, the team should ensure that they plan more concrete actions behind that. So, and the concrete actions will be defined depending on the context, depending on the project. So there, I think it's 10 steps in total. So
12,
we won't
12.
12, sorry, 12 steps in total. We won't go into details of all the steps today. As we said, you will be getting the slides afterwards, so if you want to come back to it. But we will focus on the most important steps, maybe. So first, and we've said that already, but each country has set their own rules, their own regulations. The destination are different. All of the destinations are different. So the first thing to take into account when we plan our events is to understand the latest rules and regulation of the destination. So for example, it would be what size is allowed to be gathered, the entry and exit requirement, for example, and other specific requirements. Then, and it's a key step, is to have dedicated COVID teams. So in our case, we ask all our teams, all our offices to appoint some, we call them COVID-19 coordinators for events. And those people, they're responsible for ensuring that we've respected these steps, this methodology, and that we actually implement it on our events. And because we have operations all over the world, for us, it was really essential to have a presence on the ground, to have access to the latest information in the local context. So these coordinators, they're actually the best person to know the evolution of the country in their part of the world, the evolution of the virus, sorry, in their part of the world. And they also have accessible insights into the best practice in their local country. So in that sense, the coordinators, they ensure that we define the best measure that will be adapted to the reality of the context in the end. So that's a key step. Then still in this anticipation phase, an essential step as well, and we've already talked about that, but it's to collaborate with all the players. So collaboration between all the stakeholders is key. And as Emmanuel said, we should act as the conductor of this system. And we have to ensure, okay, what are our clients' specifications? Do they have any expectations from us? What are the other partners doing, the suppliers? Do they have implemented anything? Then we have to check if what they've implemented or what they're expecting is in accordance with the local regulations. And then to spot any weaknesses, and if there are some, to make sure that we can address them. Then also key here is the communication part. So we have to define in advance a dedicated COVID communication plan. So it's essential to communicate clearly to all the parties involved. We have to, to say what we're going to implement, all the safety procedures. And it's key really that attendees and the staff as well, they understand those procedures. First, because they need to be reassured. If we want attendees to come to our event, they need to feel safe. If we want workers to still work on our events, they also need to be reassured. And also because they play actually a critical role in preventing the spread of the virus on site. So they need to respect and enforce the measures and all the safety guidelines, but yeah, they need to understand them as well. So these safety procedures, they should be shared before. So before the event, online, on the event website, in the confirmation email, for example, to ticket buyers, but also then on site with multiple channels. So it can be at the entrance, inside, with signage, with announcements and everything. So it should be in various ways that we communicate that. Then we enter the preparation phase. So here, what we first have to ensure is that the basic barrier gestures can be maintained at all time during the event. So when we talk about barrier gestures, as a reminder, the basic one are to be able to wash hands regularly, to cough and sneeze into one's elbow, to use single-use tissues and not shaking hands or greetings one another. So we have to make sure they can be respected at all times. And for that, we need to check that the right equipment is available on site. Then additionally, so apart from the barrier gestures, there are other additional hygiene requirements that come to complement these measures. And these can be physical distancing. It can be also wearing masks, having additional protective equipment, and so on. And these additional requirements will be implemented again, depending on the context, depending on the situation, on the destination, on the venue. And some of them, they may already be imposed by local authorities, but no matter what the situation, we have to review them and check if they need to be implemented or if they need maybe to even be reinforced to ensure safety. Then and it's nothing new here, but having a clear and reinforced cleaning and disinfection plan, and especially here for the highly exposed areas, so handles, lifts, and places like that. And make sure that those surfaces are disinfected regularly. And then in the preparation phase, again, key step, defining the medical protocols. So in events, nothing new again, but we always have the basic health protocols, and those have to be strengthened to be able to respond to new scenarios linked to COVID-19. So, for example, having a defined process to isolate people. Do we need maybe an isolation room? Defining a plan on how we will manage a potential COVID outbreak on site. Make sure that we know how to answer participants' questions, make sure we can quickly contact also the relevant people, and so on. So defining this strict health protocol and doing that in writing, because it's important to document everything that we decide. And then once we've prepared everything, it's time to implement. So implementing all the measures that we've defined in collaboration with all the stakeholders, and checking that that the procedures are effective. Then finalizing. So yeah, still in the finalizing part. Key here also is to train our staff. So temporary and permanent. It's key that all the staff involved on site is perfectly trained on all the measures linked to COVID-19. So as we said, the staff is a key player in enforcing the rules on site. So they must understand our plan, but they also have to understand their role. What is their role? What is expected from them on site? And again, it's essential to keep evidence of this training. So always have, for example, a presence sheet and a list of all the topics that have been addressed with people. And then once the event has started, we need to have a continuous supervision on site. So at all times, people should be in charge of verifying that the rules are respected, to make sure that we can enforce those rules if they're not respected, to verify that the relevant equipment is available. Also have daily debriefing with the staff, and if necessary to define corrective actions for the next days. And yes, our teams, they're used to manage crisis. They have already some tools and training. So yeah, it comes to complement that. And finally, we have to capitalize on what we've done. So our achievements, but also our pain points. First, if we want to be efficient in the future for similar events, so learn from what we've done. Then also because we may face another pandemic in the future, unfortunately, and also because some regulations we think might be maintained even post COVID-19. So everything that we can learn from today will be good to have in the future. So that's a summary of all the steps that we follow, our teams follow when they plan their events. And as we said, this methodology is aimed at being adaptive, and the purpose is that it can be used at all time, no matter what the stage of the crisis. in the world. So we have said that we have a need to be agile and to always adapt our solutions because the situation is constantly evolving. But however, there are things that will most likely disappear post COVID-19, like physical distancing, the mask, the testing, and so on. But there are also other things that may be maintained or reinforced even after the pandemic. And so having reinforced medical protocols, the tracing people, the cleaning and disinfection, and the barriers gestures as well. And also a key consideration to have in mind is that until now, this responsibility to ensure that to ensure the safety of people in times of COVID was fell back to governments, but we can expect that it will be progressively transferred back to event organizers. So it was the same, for example, with terrorism, right? So governments, they are responsible for the safety of their citizens, but then eventually it falls back to event organizer to ensure that safety. So in conclusion, we know that we have this responsibility to ensure the safety of our events, but today we have to adapt our solutions. We have to integrate new measures, new guidelines. We are in this recovery phase, and we hope so, but still there are plenty of uncertainties, of unknowns. We know that the process to return to a normality is underway, but we know also that all the recommendations are evolving. So in this context, we have to remain agile, to constantly get informed, constantly have the latest information, and this way we can ensure that we define the appropriate solutions, the appropriate level of security depending on the situation. So that's our approach at MCI. Thank you, everyone. And yeah, I think now it's the time for some questions, right?
Thank you so much, Marine and Emmanuel, for this super insightful presentation. You can go ahead and stop sharing your screen now, and we'll kick over to questions. I think, Gwen, what we'll do is start with a few of our questions to our esteemed guests. From MCI, who's part of our ILEA headquarter team and family. So we're so happy to welcome you, Emmanuel and Marine, to the ILEA family today. I'll go ahead and kick off and then pass over to Gwen. We'll go through some questions that we have, and then Gwen will open it up to the questions that are in the Q&A. So keep adding your questions as we're running through, and we'll get to them shortly. So I think my first question is for you, Emmanuel, because you guys have talked about this incredible toolkit that you have, and we'll be sharing it afterwards. But before we even start thinking about producing the in-person event, what safety considerations would you say should be top of mind before we even get into the toolbox stage?
Okay, so for me, the main considerations to keep in mind remains the situation of the country. And with two factors. First, it's the spread of the virus, and secondly, the hospital capacities. We need to work with the competent local authorities. But in most countries, anyways, if the health situation is not good enough, it's not possible to organize an event. So normally we can add this problem. Then when we organize an event with the COVID, we can choose a destination where we can do the measures. And if possible, avoid the public transport.
Mhm.
The real challenge is to reassure participants and create a favorable climate for them.
Gwen, you're on mute. There you go.
Yeah, I'm off mute now. Yeah, I was gonna direct this question to you, Marine. Especially as event organizers, we're doing all these things, and obviously we want to make sure that we're keeping our attendees safe. I'm just wondering, like, during this whole time, what event safety trends or innovative ideas and tips, have you seen that you can share that can help us, as producers, to produce safer events?
Yeah. So I think we've all seen lots of hybrid events or virtual events. Hybrid is definitely a big trend today. So, or at least I think now all of the events, they incorporate some kind of virtual components to the experience. So I think it's critical to have some kind of virtual components because it's safer. First, for a part of the population that couldn't join otherwise, and also it's innovative. It helps reaching a wider audience. And now we've also seen lots of new technologies that can help us first to enhance a little bit the experience, and also our support our safety requirements. So for example, we're thinking of those touchless technologies. So I'm thinking of the self-scanning check-in, the facial recognition, digital badges. I've also seen the remote queuing apps, for examples. So those, they also help, that we don't have to touch that many surface, but also it reduces the amount of lines and those, it helps with this physical distancing requirements. And I think a lot of tech companies, they're developing their products, their apps, to help with this distancing recommendations. I've seen also those wristbands that can notify people by vibration or things like that. They can notify you if you're too close to someone, for example. And all those tracing products, they can also help, informing people if they have been in contact with an infected people during the event. So I think those technologies definitely can help us in that way.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think we're seeing a lot of exciting things come out right now. My question though is, we have events of all sizes and all budgets that we're producing. Maybe I'll put this one to you, Emmanuel. What are some this all gets expensive, right? So what are some cost-effective ways that event producers, venues, partners, and suppliers can work together to ensure the health and safety of both their teams and attendees?
Yes, so what we are seeing is that each partner comes up with their own guideline and procedures and processes, etc., to assure the safety of the event against COVID. But I think that if we multiplying the measures, we make the system more complex and we increase the cost. So what is needed is for all partners to agree on a single, simple and reasonable guideline. And for that, I think that the COVID-19 coordinator must be appointed, and this person should be responsible for defining the appropriate measures and enforcing them. And it's for this reason that the event organizer must act as a conductor. I think is a key role.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I want to ask you a question too, Emmanuel. You know, there's so many you know, people talking about testing and you know what you should do and you know that whole thing. So you know, like should that be something that event professionals are considering? You know, maybe adding like a COVID rapid test, or you know, maybe adding temperature checks on the day of the event as a mitigation strategy for COVID, or you know, what do you think are some of the advantages and disadvantages of doing something like that?
Okay, so I am in favor of tests. It's a good thing. Once again, it's with the test we reassuring the participant to the event, and of course we are reassuring the organizer too. But I am not in favor with the on-site testing. It's very simple, because what's happened to people who have traveled and come to the Congress and we will test positive to the COVID? What we do with this person after, and who take care of this person? And then it's terrible for them, because she will block in the city or in the country. So for me, the test must be before the event, before the people travel. And if these people is positive, they just can stay at home. So, okay for the test, but not on site.
Got it. Good insight. So, you know, kind of tagging on to that, we have a lot of things now in our toolbox to produce a safe event, a lot of considerations, new things coming out. So we take all of those into consideration. We have our COVID coordinator, but the ability to produce a safe event and then guests feeling safe to attend the event feel like two very different things. Can you give us a few tips that we can use to help our guests feel safe attending the events that we're producing?
Yes, I think on the contrary that they are the same thing. For us, the challenge is to organize events where people will feel safe. Otherwise, participants will not come. In France, for example, the cinema, the movie theaters were open in recent months, but without success. No success because the context is not safe enough to go to the cinema. So if the risk is too high or the protection measure too restrictive, people will not come. That's why we have to wait for the right moment, have simple procedures, and communicate very well to the attendees. I think that's the key role for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, along those lines, we're on you, Emmanuel, with all these questions, but I have another one about, you know, there's a shared responsibility between, you know, event professionals and attendees, you know, for managing, you know, their safety at an event. You know, what should event professionals expect from attendees, you know, and what actions should attendees take to protect themselves and others, you know, if they're attending events, you know, from COVID-19?
So difficult questions and difficult answer. The concept of responsibility remains unclear. And it's different between a country from another country. The question is, can we be held responsible for contagions during an event? I don't think so, as long as the measures recommended by the countries are respected. And that is why it's important to document all decisions and keep evidence of what we do. It's very, very important to have the proof, to have the document. Not only for the COVID issue, for all events and all time. For example, we can imagine filming the team briefings, taking pictures of the installation, but it's very, very important. Moreover, each member of the organization must be involved in enforcing the rule, asking people to put on their mask, checking that the distance is respected and something like that. If we have this condition, I think, and if we can prove that we do that, we are not responsible in case of accident, in case of contagion inside an event. And then, as for the participant, they must respect the guideline, of course. And this is the responsibility of all people to respect the condition, because it's a live issue. So it's very important to respect all conditions. But the responsibility is always difficult to answer.
I think that's a good point. Maybe I'll direct to Marine. You know, it's great to have all these rules and systems in place and people there, but what additional tips or what do you recommend for that enforcement of the health and safety rules and protocols once we're on site?
Yeah, so yeah, we've talked about it a little bit earlier, but and as Emmanuel just said, I think we have to keep it easy. The first thing is that whatever we decide, whatever we implement, it should be easy to follow, easy to understand for everyone, and simple, you know, and one single procedure and guidelines, and not multiply everything between all the stakeholders. Then, as we said, someone from the event team should be in charge of everything COVID-19 related. So in our case, we name it the COVID coordinator, but someone can be responsible for making sure that that people actually comply with the rules. And okay, there is this person, but all the staff in the end should also feel involved. So it's important to involve each member of the staff in this process and to train them correctly beforehand. So train them to enforce the rules.
So you're enforcing the rules, you've trained everybody, you know, but what if you actually do get an outbreak at an in-person experience? You know, what can you do to protect the guest and yourself, you know, before, during, and after the event?
Yeah, and that's yeah. In the presentation, we mentioned to have always a clear and defined protocols for when we have outbreaks on site. But here, what we think is that, you know, the temporality aspect it's very important, because between the time that the person is infected at the event and he or she is sick, then it can be several days. So that's why it's really necessary to, as Emmanuel said, to document everything and to keep an attendance list, so we can give it to the authorities, and then it's the local authorities who will be able to inform all people if in the future someone gets sick and people have been in contact with them. So that's what we can do. But then to mitigate this risk, we could imagine also to ask participants before to fill in a form stating where, if they had been in contact with infected or sick people, or if they have been exposed to the virus. So we can also imagine having that question at the registration phase on the registration form, and as I've seen in the chat, then personal responsibility in this situation is key.
Thanks. So Gwen, I think I'll ask one final question of Emmanuel, and then I see there are about 10 questions in the chat. So we have about 15 minutes left. We should be able to get through all of them. So I'm going to take it like kind of back up a level. So safe event production now in the time of COVID-19 is going to play a key role in the event industry's recovery process. With the current facts we know now about the pandemic, how do you think this will continue to affect and shape our industry as we rebuild and into the future?
We believe that the event industry remains an essential business and that it will definitely stay. So it's for that I love my job and I love my company. But it will certainly change toward events that will combine a part of digital, a part of hybrid event, and a part of face-to-face. But for me, the basic question is whether we should endorse the pandemic issue or take the responsibility of it. I think it's no. It remains the responsibility of our government to ensure the security of our territories. Be it in terms of pandemic, of course, virus, but also in terms of terrorism or war or something like that. But I believe that the event industry stay an essential business in our world. It's sure.
Well, we do too. And we're glad to all be part of that cohort together and get that message out. Gwen, I'm going to pass over to you to start asking some of the questions that have come from our family that's attending.
Thanks, Dana. I think I'm going to give this first one to you, Marine. It's from Preeti. It says, what is the best way to get feedback from attendees, whether they felt safe and comfortable during the event?
Yeah, I would say post-event survey, but I'm not sure if the question is to have real-time feedback or after the event. If it's after the event, then definitely to have an event survey that is raising this question, if not dedicated only to the safety.
So I think to complete Marine, just a point. If attendees come to the event, we win. It means that the condition to have people, it's all right. It means that the security is done. It means that people are confident. So I think if people come to the event, this is the best result for us.
So our next question comes from Elizabeth. It says, is the COVID coordinator a medical professional or an event professional?
Not a medical professional, I think, because we need the medical professional to take care of people in case of problem, in case of disease, in case of something like that. No, I think the COVID coordinator is a guy who can manage people. We can explain to the team what we must do and can work with the different partners to find the best solution. So I think it's more an organizer of events than a doctor or something like that.
Okay, our next
very practical people we need.
Yeah. Our next question comes from Kristen. How can we plan for future events when we don't know if it'll be allowed/safe? How do we talk to sponsors, attendees, marketing, etc.? How late can we wait until we think we will be in the clear to start planning and spending money?
Marine?
Yeah, that's always the challenge, right? Is to because we have no clear vision as to when actually we will be able to start planning again some live events. But yeah, I think and yeah, correct me, Emmanuel, but the project should what I mean, the first thing we say that we do is to always check the situation in the country. What are the, every local authority, they display their recommendations, their guidelines, and if we follow that strictly, what can we do? If yeah, I think if we start by following that, what is recommended, then we have our answer. Should we go for it or not? And then maybe to have this backup plan, can we have a backup plan that maybe we can turn it hybrid or totally virtual if we can? I think that's the best option. I know it's not always possible, but I think it's the best option to have, to be able to quickly turn in case we cannot go forward.
I think we are waiting the vaccine. So the next step, it's when the vaccine arrives, people will be reassured. So people restart to move, restart to take plane, restart to go to with the group, etc., etc. But the vaccine, it's a new problem. It's a new issue because when we organize an event, what we do if some people not accept to have the vaccine come to the event. This is the next problem. So, but I think to reopen our event, we must refund the confidence. People must be confident, and this is the key. And for that, we need the government, we need the vaccine, we need perhaps to wait some months, because in the few months the situation must be clearly and safe. So yes, I think we need time, but I don't know how. We talk about January for the first vaccine, and we talk about July to 2021 to restart the event with a lot of group. So we hope so.
Yeah, it's a hard thing.
Yes.
Our next question comes from Anna. How do you know if your event should go forward or cancel?
Yeah, again, Emmanuel, I think we would say that it's, the local authorities that eventually will will have the last word, let's say. But in our case, we don't have like a go or no go checklist. It all yeah, I think we have to keep informing on the latest evolution of the spread, because it progresses quickly, and so to keep on being informed of the spread, and then constantly follow the local recommendation, the local regulations, but they will have the final word, I think.
Yes,
so
consider the situation of the country. I think it's what I said in the first question. I think the situation in the country, it's a key point. If you see that there are a lot of spread of the virus of the country, and this hospital is totally blocked, we don't have to plan an event in this country like that.
So the next question I actually can answer. It says, will the slides be shared with attendees? The answer to that is yes. So thank you for asking that, Rhonda. Jill asks, have you changed any contractual wording to limit your liability due to COVID should someone become ill?
And I'm sorry, but Attendees is not my job. I am not a specialist of that, so I prefer no answer. My job is to define the process to do a safe event. Sorry.
And I think we do, Gwen, have some other resources from past webinars, and we can certainly continue to address that in future webinars coming up as well.
The next question, and we've got about 3 minutes left, so we'll try to get through as many of these as I can. Next question is from Jeff. As this has become a delicate political issue for some, how do we handle pre-event messaging and during to mitigate those who exercise bad behavior? So those who don't want to participate, basically, in wearing a mask or something like that. We have a lot of that in North America.
Yeah. What would be your answer, Emmanuel? Should we?
Goes back to that.
I mean, it's tough, fun, and in the end, it's also our responsibility when we define our guidelines that they're correctly respected. Up to which point we can say, okay, how can we limit bad behavior? I will have a hard time to set the limit of until where we can go. I mean, Emmanuel, I don't know if you have any other
No,
thoughts
it's
on
okay
that.
for me, but
so I think we probably have time to ask one more question. That actually, you may be able to answer this one really quickly. It says, this is from Jesse. Where can we find the events toolbox that Marine is talking about, which will be in your slides, right?
Yeah, I mean, so we will share in the slides, there is this wheel, the methodology, but I think what she's referring to is that because on one slide we had left our event toolbox, but it's actually an internal document that that our teams could refer to if they needed some inspirational, like more concrete actions. But in the methodology, in the slide that we are sharing, there are already we've added some examples to make it a little bit more concrete. So everything will be in there.
I think that's going to probably have to be the last question. I'm sorry I couldn't get to the rest of them. I just want to thank our speakers, Emmanuel, André, and Marine Mugnier for their time today, contributions. Also want to thank our International President, Dana Macaulay, CSEP, for joining in this conversation. Thank you so much, Dana, for being here. And thank you again to our sponsor, Giants Enterprises. We will be hosting 2 additional webinars next month to close out the year, and we'll be sending out information on those very soon. We do appreciate your time being here, and we hope that you really enjoyed today's webinar, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having us today.
Thanks.
thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.